All right, welcome back to my channel, Fury the Northman. I'm excited. I was on vacation last week. The wife and I went to Maine, had a great time. We're back. I missed yesterday. I wanted to get a video out to you folks today. I'm excited. Want to talk about, again, using the whiteboard. I'm excited. Talk about how to be debt-free going into retirement to build wealth and basically have the greatest experience of wealth that you can in your retirement years. To my knowledge, there's really only two ways to be debt-free leading up into retirement and or, walking through the door of retirement, however you want to say it. There's really only two ways. And I'm going to talk about that today. I'm going to break it down real quick with the whiteboard, and we're going to go from there. How to be debt-free. The first way that really most Americans, I believe, facilitate, especially nowadays. Also, too, I'm going to talk about the cons and pros to both. As the great Thomas Sowell said, there's no perfect solution, there's just trade-offs. So, the main way that people pay off debt going into retirement, okay? So, let's say someone works for 30 years, they've saved money, they've invested to whatever degree they can, their 401k, and they're now ready to stop working. Let's say they're at Social Security age, let's say they're at 65. And at 65 years old, let's say he and she, or he and he, or she and she, whatever, two people are both making $1,500 a month on Social Security. She worked, he worked, she worked, he worked, whatever. Times two, their income is $3,000 a month. Now, that doesn't include their 401k savings, if they have any liquid cash, or if they've done any investing in the stock market, whatever the case may be. What we do know, at least from what I read a couple years ago, the average 401k at the time of retirement, so when someone leaves their position, only has about $100,000 to $150,000 in it. You and I both know that's not a lot of money. You can't retire on that. So, again, this is, in my experience, speaking with people, picking the brains of other people and asking questions, the first way I'm talking about how to be debt-free in retirement or heading into retirement, this is how most people operate. They work until they're age 65 to start getting Social Security. Both he and she worked. So they're both getting a Social Security check. Now, $3,000 a month isn't bad if you're debt-free. But let's say they bought a house because they were both decent earners. Let's say they bought a $350,000 home. And like most people, they only paid the mortgage. They never paid more, they never paid less. They just paid the same mortgage. They've been in it for a while. And like most people, they probably at some point used an equity line of credit, so they probably still owe around this and or half of it. So let's be generous and say they owe half. They owe $175,000 on that home. Let's say they have two car payments. Now let's be generous. Let's say they have one. Let's say the car costs $350 a month. Car, this is the house. Okay. The car costs $350 a month. Their home mortgage is probably right around the average of what most mortgages are, which is $1,000 a month. The last time I checked, the average mortgage in America was between $1,000 to $1,500 a month. So right now, heading into retirement, they have to pay on top of their monthly expenses, water, electricity, groceries, etc., they have to pay effectively $1,400 a month. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that's roughly half of what their Social Security income is. By the way, that's pre-tax. Okay. So, we know that both of them probably had a 401k. Let's say both of them had around, again, the last time that I checked, 401ks, the dollar amount resided somewhere between $100,000 to $150,000. So let's say they have $300,000 cumulative in their 401k. By the way, you cannot merge 401ks into an annuity, at least not at this point. I don't know why. That it's possible that that's changed. My Edward Jones investor from a few years back told me that, because one of my plans was we were going to just put our 401ks in to an annuity together to generate income, et cetera, et cetera. Said you can't do that. We'd have to have two separate annuities, which it's fine. You can do that. It's the same percentage, but it is surprising to me that even at the end of working all those years, the money you've accumulated in your 401k, they're still telling you how you can do it. It's terrible, or how you can use it. It's terrible. But let's say they both have 300,000, or let's say they both have $150,000 in the 401k, so they actually have 300,000 together 401k. Again, sorry for the John Madden. This doesn't mean shit. I'll say that again. This doesn't mean shit. On my last video I did before my vacation, talking about income and not thinking about your earnings on an hourly basis, that's a slave mentality, but thinking about it from a daily earnings. We all know right here, okay? This doesn't mean a goddamn thing. If they both took $1,000 a month, just $1,000 a month out of their respective 401ks to add to their $3,000 a month in Social Security, in about 10 years' time, they'll be out of money. Just taking $1,000 a month. It's a joke. This doesn't mean anything, so this might as well not exist. It's a joke. Terrible, awful, no good, very bad day. Terrible. Fucking, you see that catch? I'm an athlete. Anyways, they're probably not going to take $1,000 a month. They're probably like most people, because to get that number in your 401k, you had to not know what you were doing, and you had to specifically choose to be overly conservative, which means you missed out on all of your working years for your money to make money for you, which is very common. It's tragic. I actually need to do a video on 401ks if I haven't already. But, so basically, although they have a cumulative $300,000, they still owe $175 on their house, most likely. That cost them $1,000 a month, and they still have a car payment of $350 a month, which is roughly half of their Social Security income. So they're going to have to take money out of that 401k just to live, because if they don't, they're going to have at the end of the day after taxes, just paying these two items right here, they're probably going to have about $400 left after paying water, groceries, electricity, etc., etc. Things come up as well. The inevitable break, TIB, the inevitable break, that happens too. So this is a very common scenario that I've seen when I worked in insurance and talked to different people. This is very common. People hit 65 years old. They don't have the house paid off. They probably have about 50% of it paid off. I've met very few people that have the house paid off, which is tragic. Some people only have about 35% off because they keep just borrowing against the house, which is terrible. But unless you're going to invest, that's a different story. But, and then you still shouldn't do it. You should do an investment property. That'll be a different video. This is a common breakdown, forgive the chicken scratch Madden writing. This is a common scenario that I've seen, and it's tragic. Now, here's the good news. You can still win even if you put yourself in this position after 30 years. Both parties, 65 years old, making $1,500 a month, $3,000. You owe $175K on the house. You have a $350 a month car payment that doesn't include car insurance, etc., etc. Even in this scenario, with only about $300,000 cumulative in your 401ks, even in this scenario, you can still win. Here's how. Let me erase this. My friends tell me I need to stop breathing in with my nose or whatever that's called, but I have allergies and sometimes it's just a pain in the butt. So I'm sorry if you guys get grossed out. Like I said, if you hate it, do me a favor and just find that person in high school or college you couldn't stand and send them all my videos. Really would appreciate it. Appreciate you. Okay, so I'm going to recap some of the same information. We're going to go into it. 2 65-year-olds equals $3,000 a month in Social Security plus $300K in a cumulative 401ks. Now this doesn't speak to their savings account, their liquid cash, but we know, I think I've done a video on it, we know that the average savings account only has, I think, about $500 in it. Most people can't even take a $500,000 hit. Actually, that's not true. I think its checking accounts only have about $500, and I think most people don't even have a savings account. So, and no credit card to speak of. So this is a very common breakdown that I've seen, okay? This is their income now. Sorry, got excited. This is their income. Okay? That's their income now. They're done working. They can get Medicare, health insurance. They want to just enjoy life. They want to enjoy the golden years. This is a common scenario. If you stack this up against what they owe, as I showed you earlier, very quickly you realize this is terrible and dread can fill you. And in fact, a lot of people are so clueless. My brother works for an investment firm in the town that we're from, and they meet people every other day who come in with $50,000 in their savings account, debt up to their eyeballs on Social Security, and say, I'm ready to retire. Oh, well, how are you going to do that? Well, here's one way you can. The scenario that I pointed out earlier, they owe $175,000 on the house, they have that $350 a month car payment, etc., etc. Here's how you can win and become debt-free in that scenario, even only making $2,000 a month and having an abysmal 401k amount cumulative between the both of you. That $175,000 house, or that debt that you owe, sell it. Especially if you bought it for $350, maybe you can sell it for $500. I'm sorry, $400,000. If you can sell it for $400,000, the bank's going to take the $175 out that you owe. Hopefully you don't have PMI at this point, but who knows. The real estate agent's going to take their pound of flesh. By the end of it, you're probably going to have $200,000. Here, I'll do it this way. I'll do it this way. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to show people, even if you go into retirement in this situation, you can still come out on top and win, and here's how. But at the end of this, let's say you have $200,000 from the purchase of your home, okay? And that'll be tax-free in the great state of Indiana, in the heartland here, the land of milk and honey, as one great man would say. If you live in a house for more than 2 years, it's your private residence, you pay no income capital gains tax on that profit. So that $200,000 is all yours. You've now added to your $300,000 saving 401k by $200,000. I don't think you can pump it into the 401k. You probably shouldn't, but just cumulative, now you have an extra $200,000, okay? So that's a win. The mortgage goes away, you got 200 grand, okay? What's the next thing we got to worry about? What's the next thing we got to get on? It's that $350 car payment, that brutal $350 that just keeps crushing you, okay? Let's say that $350 car payment that you owe, you got 3 years left, but it was a $15,000 note initially. Now let's say it was $20,000 and you owe 12. Now, yeah, let's say you owe 12 grand. On that car. The $350 a month represents $12,000 that you owe on the vehicle. Okay? You have another car. Remember I said, I believe I said they had 2 cars, one had a car payment. If I didn't, I'm saying that now. They have 2 cars, one with a car payment. You have 2 options. You can go in and try to sell the car back to the dealership at a massive loss. They're probably only going to give you, at this point, $3,000 for it, and then pay the remaining balance of the car off with your $200,000 in cash surplus. Okay? You could do that. Or, which I think is the better option. You take the cash that's $200,000 and you just go ahead and you just pay this off. Now you no longer have a car payment. You can lower the full coverage insurance down to liability. At this point, the car may be older. And now you have two cars, or even if you just have one car, you have no payments that you have to pay on it. All you have to do is put your gas into it. And at this point, you're sitting on $182,000 left. By using the $200,000 to pay this off, you now have $182,000. Right? No. Sorry. 188. Sorry. $188,000 is what you have left after paying that car off. You've sold your house. You've liquidated yourself from that debt. You've sold it. You made $200,000. You put $12,000 down on your car. You now have either one car or two cars that are debt-free. There's no note. All you have to do is pay to maintain them, which is far cheaper than making a payment. I'm going to do a video about that too with cars. But now, look at this. Now, you have, let's say this. Most people have about $15,000 to $30,000 in credit card debt. Let's say they only have $15,000 in credit card debt. It's tragic, even though I believe in credit cards, most people use them wrong. So $15,000 in credit card debt, that's a lot of money. Here's the good news. You got cash here to pay it off. Pay that off. Pay it down. Pay it all down. But we got to subtract $15,000 away from the $180,000 we have left over. I'm going to struggle with the math again. I think it's $173,000. Let me do it up here. Forgive me if my math is wrong. Now, all the profit from your house, that's all you have left. But you are now concerning your debt. You are at debt zero. At this point, you have 100% of your income minus your expenses. Your debt to income ratio is flawless. You have $300,000 cumulative assets between you and your spouse and $173,000 cash in your savings account with no debt, with $3,000 a month coming in. This is a great scenario. If you can make this work, this is a fantastic scenario. At this point, you can recalibrate, which you would have to, because you're making less money now than you were while you were working. You're going to have to recalibrate to live in a safe manner at $3,000 a month. That's cumulative income, obviously, as well. That's before taxes. But the good news is, guys and gals, you're debt-free. You owe no one any money, and you have two cars that all you have to do, barring disaster, if they get totaled or whatnot, all you have to do is maintain them and keep repairing them. You know, which, believe it or not, there's a lot of people that do that, and it does make a lot of sense. You know, obviously, you know, paying $1,500, $2,000 for a new transmission on a car that's 10 years old is terrible, but it's better than taking out a new car payment and something going wrong, and now you got to keep paying the car payment and fix the car. So my point is this. At this point, it started out miserably, but this is actually a really good scenario. You got $173,000 cash. You got $300,000 in cumulative assets between both 401ks, and you got $3,000 a month coming in. You are at a downside here, though, now, because you still got to have a place to live, okay? Now, there's quite a few options in these days that are really exciting. You can buy a townhouse. You can buy a condo. Something that my wife and I want to do, we want to either buy a camper and or build a tiny house and just pull it around the nation, travel and see America. Go up into Alaska, take Highway 1 or whatever that highway is out there, and really see, you know, America and really, you know, the North American continent. But anyways, but you still got to have a place to live. I wouldn't encourage you to take out a mortgage or even rent for that matter. Although renting does make sense in retirement because you remove yourself from the obligation of having to maintain the property, and now the landlord does for you. But let's say you decide to rent. Let's say you decide to rent and you do some real quick calculation. The rent is $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 a year. You're both 65 years old. In 25 years, you'll be 90. So let's do some real quick math here. I'll do it down here. 12 times, we'll do 25 times 12. 10, 5, In 25 years, you would have spent $260,000, unless I did my math right, I don't think I did. You would have spent $260,000 on, right? Or no, am I wrong about that? Hold on a second. 10, 5, 0. No, I'm sorry. It's even more than that. I apologize. 300, excuse me. 300,000. If I'm wrong about that too, correct me in the comments. You would have spent $300K in rent. Okay. Now you have $172,000 you could just take from to do that, or you could just pay out of your Social Security. It's up to you. In my opinion, the better solution would be to just buy a small home or a townhouse in cash. Okay? And have a very small mortgage. Try to get a mortgage of like $500 a month. Keep your cars at zero and go from there. Okay? Because now if you own the property, even though you have to maintain it, you do have the ability to let it appreciate, sell it, and make a profit again. So, but let's say you had to spend $150,000 to buy a nice townhouse that you could live in. You now only have $23,000 left over. Okay? But that's okay, because you're making $3,000 a month and you still have the accumulative assets of your 401k. How did we get here? If you followed my video, how we got to this point, which it's not great, but you can actually have a really good life with $3,000 a month if you don't owe anybody any money. You can really enjoy your money, have a great time. Especially too, most people work part-time, most people do something to fill their time as a hobby. It's very valuable to do that. So you may make $500 to $1,000 a month extra, which I'm not even going to get into that, but that could be happening too. But although this is a pretty decent situation, how did we get here? Because we walked through that door of retirement with all this debt and all this money we owed. Well, how we did it is, at the time of retirement, we liquidated. We sold what we could and paid off what we needed to. That's how we did it. Now, the downside to that is that all the while we were paying off the mortgage, we were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest, not including the money going to PMI if you had it, or whatever the case may be, depending on your loan. We weren't earning really any money with our 401ks because we were too conservative, so we put ourselves in a hole in that route. We paid thousands of dollars in interest towards the car. But the good news is we liquidated what we could, we paid off what we had to, and now we're set with a house that we bought in cash with $22,000 for any repairs, whatever the case may be, $3,000 a month coming in income with $300,000 in cumulative assets in 401ks. Guys, this is actually a decent spot to be in when you're 65 years old, believe it or not. It's a decent spot to be in. And how it happened is we sold the house and paid off the debt, okay? That's what we did. Doing that put us in a position that now we're debt-free in retirement, even though our income isn't great and our cash to fall back on is low, even though that's still accumulating assets, which is good. Our cash to fall back on is okay. If we would have put both 401ks into an annuity and got 3.5%, you're looking at probably $9,000 extra a year of income, which isn't bad. That's a pretty good amount of money when you consider it, but that's, of course, pre-tax, et cetera, et cetera. Didn't even want to get into that because I want to talk about annuities and income at a later time. But how we got to this spot is we paid everything off and we sold what we could, okay? All the while, though, leading up to that, we're giving all of our money to the bank in interest because, all we paid was the monthly mortgage, no more, no less. We didn't pay any more on the car, so we're paying all that interest to the car. And we're not even earning money leading up to it. We're just, it'll be there. I want to be conservative. Got to have money. I'm going to be conservative. I'm going to be conservative with my investments. And we don't have anything to show for it at the end of it, save a measly 401k of $100,000 to $150,000, of course, between two people, totally $300,000 if it's $150,000. So let's keep the same scenario. Two people at 65, $3,000, okay? $3,000 a month, Social Security, right? erasing's keeps shifting the. Sorry if this is moving a lot, guys. I apologize. I need to get an eraser is what I got to do. So the first manner in which people can become debt-free going into retirement is basically just liquidating all of their debts and purchasing a home, a small house in cash, or whether that's a trailer, a camper, whatever the case may be, buy something in cash, you have a mortgage, having a little bit of cash left over. But let's say it's the same scenario. Two people, 65 years old, and together Social Security make $3,000 a month. But these people were different. Their $350,000 house they purchased, hopefully you guys can see this. H for home, $350K, they paid it off. It's now worth $400. They also made the bad choice of being overly conservative with 401ks, and total, they only have $300,000. But they don't have a car payment. Haven't had one for some time. They have 2 cars. They have a savings of $20,000. Because again, if you pay off your house, okay, there's cultural indicators that show this, and there's some data that shows this. If you pay your house off fast, typically what people do is, whatever that mortgage payment was, $1,000, $1,500, typically people put half of that into a savings account and they use the other half as enjoyment. So if they paid the house off in 10 or 15 years and worked for 30, let's say for just 10 years they saved $750 a month, which is $7,500 times or plus $1,500. That's an extra $90,000 in savings. Let's put it right here. Extra $90,000 in savings, all the while still earning that $750 a month extra for themselves to enjoy. They've been debt-free. For the last 10 years, they've been debt-free. They've just been working and saving money. They've probably been enjoying way too much money because if they only have $90K at the end of 10 years, as well as only $300,000 at the end of 25 or 30 years working, they're probably blowing money more than they should, but they're being diligent about paying all their money off. Here's what's exciting about this scenario. This $400,000, the house, that's all theirs. There's no money that's going to the bank. They didn't take an equity line of credit out on it. They didn't do anything. They just paid it off, and they were happy to not have the tax write-off. They wanted that mortgage in their pocket. So when they sell this, which they don't even have to, but if they sell this, they now get to add to the $300,000, $400,000 cash. Now, between these two, they got a lot more options. And they still have $90,000 in savings. Again, there's cultural, not medium, that's the wrong thing to say it. There's data that shows people that pay their house off early, they tend to save more liquid dollars because they built in enough responsibility into their budget that although they do enjoy themselves with 50% of what that total mortgage was, they tend to save the other half for expenses and just for retirement. But for the most part, this is the exact same scenario as the first couple. The difference is they've been debt-free with their cars and their home for 10 years or more. And look at where they're at now. Oh, and in doing so, everything was much cheaper. They avoided paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest to the bank with the house. They avoided thousands of dollars of interest on the car because they paid everything off. Okay? Never mind they made the mistake of being too conservative with their 401k. Never mind that. $3,000 a month coming in for Social Security between the both of them. $300,000 in total 401k assets. They got a $400,000 paycheck coming when they sell their house, and they got $90K in savings. Guys, if at the end of me and Val working, if we're in this scenario, I'm going to be tickled pink. I have a vision that's much greater, but I'll be ecstatic if we're here by the end of our working years. This is a great place to be, especially with what Val and I want to do. We want, like I said, tiny house, camper, pool behind, whatever, travel, see, enjoy the world. What's the difference? Obviously, this is different. The 90,000 is different, and obviously this is different. But again, we have to ask, although those two things are different, why are they different? How is this scenario right here, if I'm out of the camera, I apologize. How is this scenario different? Let me tell you how it's different. They paid everything off before they hit retirement age. They put themselves in a position that even before they were in retirement, all of their money is theirs. That's the difference. That's it. Obviously, these are two big differences, right? You got basically almost $500,000 here between these two, which is amazing. But the mechanism, the path upon which they took to get there, simply is they paid everything off before they even got to the age of 65. They paid everything off technically at 55. If they've been debt-free for 10 years, 55, they owed no one any money. And they just worked and saved for the next 10 years. And they said, we'll wait till Social Security and we'll take it right away. Which I think you can take it at 62. Well, no, I think it's 64 and a half. So yeah, 65, boom. And they said, we're ready to quit. We're ready to enjoy our money. The purpose of this video is that I wanted to point out, guys, you can work all your life, just pay the mortgage, have a car payment, not really invest the way you should, not really save. You can do that and still win in retirement, but it does require you. The main difference between these two, the first scenario I showed, those individuals, that scenario, they had to liquidate. They had to sell their house. They had to pay off their car, because otherwise, those two debts alone, never mind the credit card debt, was going to eat up all of their income. Not all of it, but the vast majority of it. Okay? And let's say this family, let's say they took a big trip, $15,000. Credit card. They borrowed against the house, paid it off, that payment's gone, they have a small payment. Actually, that's not true. They took it out of savings and paid it off. So they actually only have $75K. So the same scenario concerning credit cards too. They have $75K left over after paying off that card. The difference is, though, their money's been their money for 10 years. 10 years preceding the time that they actually retire. That's the difference. That's the win. Don't be people that just make the minimum payment. I read a few years back, now this is a generic example, but on a 30-year mortgage at I think a 3.5% to 5% rate, if you just make one extra payment a year, so if your mortgage is $1,000, and instead of paying $12,000 a year, you pay $13,000. If you make one extra payment a year, you knock roughly 4 years off of that mortgage. If you make 2 payments, it doesn't jump to 8, it actually jumps to closer to 10, because cumulative interest goes both directions. If you start knocking the principal down so much, the interest can't accumulate correctly, which allows you to speed up the time that or allows you to speed up the end result of not having that payment. Guys, this is important. This is huge. You can win carrying debt into retirement, but you have to liquidate the debt, and by selling or whatever the case may be, and you also are going to have to take the profit of your house, if you have it, and go buy a small home in cash, effectively, so that you don't have a mortgage, because you don't want to come out of a mortgage into another mortgage, even if it's a smaller one. You really want to avoid debt in retirement, so all of your income is yours, because most likely you're going to be living on a lower income than when you were working, okay? So you can win going into retirement, not living in retirement in debt, but going into retirement with debt by liquidating it all away. But really the better scenario is this. paying everything off. Your $400,000 is yours. Your your $75,000 is yours. Your piddly-wink $300,000 401k is yours. And all of your income is yours, save the pound of flesh you got to give to good old Uncle Sam. This is the scenario, guys. Now, the downsides to this, you didn't enjoy your money as much. You made extra payments on the mortgage. You refinanced to lower the payment, but you kept paying the original payment, so that much more went to the principal. You paid maybe 2 times the car payment in a month, or you paid 1.5 times, so $350 a month. You paid an extra $175, making a total of, I think, $525 a month to pay it off early. You didn't enjoy your money as much while you were earning it. You didn't. You sacrificed and you focused more on the end result. So there is a downside, but I think we all can agree, if we can flash forward in our mind, we would rather be in this scenario, even if we have to sacrifice some enjoyment and some fun in our working years, than in the other one where at 65 we have to make a decision right now about what we're going to do to liquidate our debt so that our money's ours. This is the way to go, guys. This is it right here. Boom, bam, 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 chicken scratch, Madden, let's go! This is it. I would encourage you to do this. If you're over-investing, Roth IRA, 401k, stocks, etc., and you're only paying the minimal amount on your student loans or your mortgage or your car, stop. That's the one thing I agree wholeheartedly with Dave Ramsey on. You should not invest really until your debt is paid off and or until your debt is at a fractional amount of your total income. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Because all that debt is doing is sucking out the gains of your 401k, your Roth IRA, and your stocks. Because most likely, you're not earning the percentage necessary to make it wealthy for you, not wealthy, to make it profitable for you while you're paying 4 and 5% on your house, which right now, there's abysmally low rates, or 5, I've seen some, 10% rates on cars if it's a used car. You're probably not making enough money in your investments to justify dumping money into those debts. Okay? This is for you. You can do this, guys. There's ways to do it. I've talked before about refinancing and paying more on the month, yada, yada, yada. I'll do a video about that again. There's tricks and there's mechanisms you can do to make it easier to pay stuff off faster. But I wanted to bring this video to you today. You can win going into retirement while having debt, but it does demand that you sever that debt from you by selling your house, paying off your debts with that profit if there is any. And if you don't have any profit on the house, just sell the debt out from under you anyways. Just get away from it if you can. And pay off what you have to. You can win. But this is the better scenario. Go into retirement debt-free. Your money's yours. Your cash and saving is yours. Your house is yours. Your cash and savings is yours. And your 401k is yours. All the while, you got $3,000 of Social Security coming in. Guys, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to be right here. And you can do it and I can do it. I don't care how much money you make, you can do it. You really can. Thanks so much for watching. If you've liked the video, like, share, subscribe. Go ahead and leave a comment, especially if I did any math wrong. Help me out there. I don't know. I think I did everything right. Whatever. Leave a comment. If you liked it, come on back. If you hated it, send it to someone you hate. See you soon.